Whig and Tory, A Tale of the Revolution. Chapter 1. Shame on the heart which never felt a fellow creature's woes, yet tenderly affects to melt in pity for a rose. I tell you, Mary, I will be obeyed. Young Leslie shall be removed to the hospital. To the hospital, my dear aunt. Only consider. I have considered that you are a foolish girl, without consideration. But this comes of sending you to boarding school, and going to nobody knows how much expense for masters to teach you the harp and the piano, the globes and the telescope. It was not so in my day. Then, young women did not presume to set up their own will and way, in opposition to their mothers and aunts. But I will tell you, Miss Mary Jansen, I will be obeyed. Nay, but my dear aunt, articulated the almost weeping Mary, listen at least to reason. Reason, forsooth, vociferated the enraged Mrs. Jansen. So you would insinuate that your aunt, who brought you up, and took so much pains in your education, acts without reason? What reason, miss, has your fine genius discovered? Why we should harbor a stranger and a rebel? The best reason in the world, my dear aunt. He is unable to be moved. The doctor, oh mercy! Have you no more humanity than to mention the doctor? Oh, my poor pug, don't mention Dr. Meredith again, child. If you would not see your poor aunt dying in convulsions, oh, my poor pug. Mary's appeal to the opinion of the doctor was the most unfortunate that could be, for an unhappy circumstance had occurred, which had entirely and forever deprived the learned Dr. Meredith of the good graces of Mrs. Mary Jansen. About 4 months previous, the doctor was called up in the night, and requested to visit one of Mrs. Jansen's family, who was ill, and as she was known to possess the requisite for remunerating any extraordinary exertion, calls were always promptly attended to. It is but justice, however, to the character of our learned friend, Dr. Meredith, to say, that for aught which we know, he would have gone with equal readiness where there was no fee in question, for he was a man of undoubted humanity. But be this as it may, the doctor arrived at Briarcliff cold, and almost exhausted with riding 8 miles in the face of a bleak northwester, and found the patient to be Mrs. Jansen's favorite monkey. Whether from the effect of the disorder, or the prescription, was never known. But poor pug breathed his last in 2 hours after taking the medicine, and Mrs. Jansen, or as she was more frequently and familiarly called, Miss Polly, could never afterwards even hear the name of the doctor, without showing strong emotions of sympathy, which commonly ended in violent hysteric spasms. Mary saw the storm which was gathering, and prudently forbore to press the subject, so that the breakfast hour passed over without further altercation, and Miss Polly retired to the care of her menagerie, leaving her amiable niece to plan, as well as she was able, how to make the stranger, who had so unexpectedly become their guest, as comfortable as his unfortunate situation would admit. There was one person to whom she might apply for assistance, but to that person, above all others, she was unwilling to owe an obligation. The doctor, she knew, could have no influence, and his former experience had proved that Miss Polly could most rigidly adhere to a purpose once formed. Mary resolved, as the only alternative, to apply to Captain Grant. She had not long to wait, for the captain had lately become an almost daily visitor at Briarcliff, drawn, no doubt, by the beauty of the scenery, though report said that the young officer found a brighter attraction in the person of Mrs. Jansen's amiable niece, than in all the romantic prospects of Bloomingdale. However this might have been, Mary felt a degree of uneasiness in his presence, and shrunk, she knew not why, from the intimacy her aunt seemed anxious to promote between them. For once, however, she waited his arrival with anxiety, and saw his approach with pleasure. Captain Grant was a kinsman of the brave General Grant, who distinguished himself at the disastrous Battle of Long Island. To invincible personal bravery, he added that manliness and urbanity of deportment, which characterized many of the British officers. But, bred in the school of loyalty, and attached to an army sent to crush the rising hopes of America, he viewed her cause with contempt, and her children as rebels. This circumstance, while it furnished him with a passport to the esteem of Miss Polly Jansen, if she could be said to feel a sentiment so noble as esteem, raised an insurmountable barrier to any degree of intimacy with a niece. Mary's opinions and feelings were, in most cases, exactly the reverse of those of her aunt, yet they never betrayed her into undutifulness or disrespect. She had mingled little in society, and her mind was unbiased by associations, but she had read much, thought much, and contracted an early habit of regulating her conduct by the counsels of her own heart. "I am in a little perplexity this morning," said she, hesitatingly, to Captain Grant, as soon as the usual civilities of recognition were over. "I am in a little perplexity this morning, and shall feel obliged to Captain Grant if he can assist me." It was the first time he had been honored with any request from Mary, and drawing from it no unfavorable presage to his own hopes, he replied, "Most willingly, Miss Jansen. Command my services in anything. The risk must be perilous which could make me hesitate, when Miss Jansen commands. It is no perilous enterprise, Captain, nor one which will add a single leaf to the laurels you have won, but it may bring the precious reward of having promoted the comfort, if not saved the life of, a human being." "The life of a human being? You speak in riddles. Pray tell me quickly what I am to understand from such a beginning." Mary blushed and hesitated, the faults of temper in her aunt. She had never made the subject of animadversion, even to her dearest friends, but humanity, on this occasion, was her excuse, and Captain Grant soon became possessed of the following facts. A stranger, of genteel appearance, wearing the uniform of the American Army, but unarmed, had been discovered the day previous fainting by the roadside. At first it was believed that his disorder was the effect of inebriety, but stooping to render him that assistance which humanity will ever bestow, even upon the unworthy, honest John MacArthur, the coachman of Miss Jansen, had discovered the stranger to have been wounded in the side. The wound, on examination, seemed to have been slightly healed, but to have bled afresh. He was brought to the house in a state of insensibility, and Mary, without consulting her aunt, had called in Dr. Meredith. By the administration of proper restoratives, life and intelligence resumed their functions, and he informed the doctor that he was an American officer, who had been wounded and taken prisoner in the Battle of Long Island. Owing to the humanity of the British officer, by whom he had been captured, his situation had been made as easy as it was possible to render a state of inaction, when his country's necessities called for the services of all her children. After the British had taken possession of New York, he was allowed, on his parole of honor, to walk about the city and adjacent villages. Rambling over the delightful village of Bloomingdale, he had insensibly exhausted the little strength which recent illness had left, and the consequence was such as we have stated. When these circumstances were stated to Mrs. Jansen, in the violence of her loyalty, she resolved to turn him from the house at once. But Mary interceded with the coachman to carry the stranger to his own room, where he was accommodated through the night. It happened, however, that one of Miss Polly's favorite cats showed some symptoms of illness, and calling for the servant whose duty it was to attend poor Griffey, she found him actually employed in nursing the sick stranger. To political prejudice was now added personal dislike. No human being, in her opinion, could be justified in engrossing attentions which were due by custom to her menagerie. The kitten was laid upon a velvet cushion and attended with anxiety. But the wounded rebel was doomed to be sent to the hospital, notwithstanding the doctor reported him to be in a state of exhaustion, which would make a removal highly dangerous. "Miss Jansen," replied Captain Grant, when he had listened to this detail, "I am sensible of the honor you do me, in commanding my services for the wounded rebel. A sick or disabled soldier is no longer an enemy, but a brother. Did you learn his name?" "He told us it was Leslie." "Leslie? Good God! Alfred Leslie, my friend? Dear Miss Jansen, a braver heart lives not in the rebel army. He is worthy of a better cause, and we must keep him here and save his life, whatever be the peril." "You know him, then?" "I knew him at Flatbush. It was my good fortune to bear him wounded from the field, but he shall live. He himself shall tell you that I am not altogether unworthy of the friendship of Miss Jansen." Another word was on his lips, but though Captain Grant had many times almost dared to talk of love, there was something in the manners of Mary Jansen which checked the declaration. Inwardly reproving the selfishness which could think of Mary when his friend was in danger, with a concern which raised him several degrees in the estimation of Miss Jansen, He desired to be conducted to the sickbed of his suffering friend. To be continued.